friends, welcome back to another adventure in the life of the old-time rock and roller. Now today, we're going to field some questions that we got on the fan page. And the story will begin in 1974 and go through 1976. The topic of today's story is the great rock and blues singer Kathi McDonald from Seattle, Washington. Probably one of the most incredible female vocalists of all time. So this is where our story will begin.
Well, we received a request from one of your subscribers, and she writes, I want to hear about your experiences with Kathi McDonald. So, can you just start with her background?
Okay, easy enough. So, Kathi was born in Seattle, Washington in 1948. Kathi made her singing debut when she was 12 years old, and throughout high school, she performed around the Pacific Northwest. Kathi appears on over 72 gold records and singles. She's also in the Washington Blues Society's Hall of Fame. One of the greatest singers of blues and rock of all time, in my opinion, Kathi McDonald was the only woman capable of filling the shoes of Janis Joplin. Recording and touring with Big Brother and the Holding Company, Kathi and the band recorded 3 albums and toured, continuing the tradition of the San Francisco sound. So this is a little bit of her background leading up to our relationship. Because in 1974, she launched a solo career with the release of her Insane Asylum album on Capitol Records. This album featured musicians such as Nils Lofgren, John Cipollina, and Neil Schon on guitar. Ansley Dunbar played the drums, and Boots Hogston played the horn. It was released in 1974, and it reached 156 on the Billboard Top 200. Rufas was Kathi's opening act when she performed at the Whiskey in May of 74. Kathi sang backup for my band Slingshot when we performed at the Whiskey in November of 1974. And that's a little bit of the background that led up to our time playing together. What is the next question?
When did you first work together?
Well, the first gig we played together was with my band Slingshot at the Whiskey, I think November 4th. She and Leah Santos and Eddie Rodriguez sang backup for me. So we had performed together. And when I came back from the USO tour and had just cut the singles with Steve Perry, I heard that Kathi was looking for a band. She had 3 nights booked at the Whiskey in LA and didn't have a band. So me and Rob went over to her apartment. We talked and said, yeah, we can pull a bass player and a keyboard player together for you and we'll have a nice sound. So she said, great, set up a rehearsal. So I knew a bass player named Gary Richwine. He was a lefty, and he did a great job singing that song, Rescue Me. So I went over to talk to him about the opportunity, and when I came to the door, he was wearing an apron, and he was pushing an Electrolux vacuum cleaner. I said, Gary, what the hell is going on? He said, well, my wife, Maria, is an actress, and she just scored a part in the Buddy Holly story, starring Gary Busey, and his wife, Maria, was playing Maria Holly in the movie, which was incredible. So I said, okay, you're excused for being in the maid's outfit. I told him about the opportunity, and he said he had a keyboard player named Randy who was good to go. So I set up a rehearsal, Kathi, Rob, myself, Gary, and Randy. Well, we started off and we did Rescue Me and a couple other songs, Shop Around or something, that they did. And then it came time to doing Kathi's songs. I had given them a copy of her Insane Asylum album, and we started to practice on them, and they clearly hadn't spent any time on it and had no sense of urgency. The Whiskey job was booked in 2 weeks, and Kathi had not played in LA at the Whiskey for a year. So after the rehearsal, Kathi and I got together, and she said, I don't like these guys. Get rid of them. Come up with somebody new. I don't care who, but I'm not working with these guys. I said, good enough. So Rob and I went down to the Musicians Contact Service. Everybody turned to them when they needed a player in a jam, and they didn't have a friend that was available. And we found a guy, a bass player named Dudley Cutler, who was a friend of Dick Wagner's from New York. And we found Neil Broadbeck, a slide guitar player, a really great guy. In fact, actually, I'm still in touch with Neil, and he's now a chiropractor in Long Island. So I set up a rehearsal with these guys. I told Kathi I found 2 new guys. And she said, all right, let's do it. We went and rehearsed, and everything was sounding good. We rehearsed 2 more times, and we were ready. So the opening night at the Whiskey came, and it was a big hit. We were clicking on 8 cylinders. The band was hot, it was tight, it was fresh, and it was exciting. The second night, I think my old Ampeg Gemini 4 blew up on the second song. And so somebody said, one of the stage guys said, hey, there's a 50-watt orange head out there. You can use it, an amp. So I plugged into this orange amp. It sounded unbelievable, really good. Well, Don Preston, who played guitar for Leon Russell, was there that night. He came to the dressing room after the show with a bunch of people. We hit it off right away. He loved my guitar playing. And I loved his playing too, from the Leon records. So the first gig that we played was a 3-nighter at the Whiskey, and we were off and running. Did that answer the question?
Yes.
After the Whiskey gig, Mark Levine joined us on bass.
How did you become her band leader?
Well, it was kind of a natural step since I was a lead guitar player, and I pulled all the guys together, and I had several songs that I had written that Kathi loved, and we put in the show. We did, I think, only 1 song from her album, which was Heartbreak Hotel, but Neil and I played a great dual lead on that. We did Hold On to Your Dreams, which I wrote. We changed keys. And then we did some standards that Kathi had. One was Superstar. Boy, did she sing that well. Fire and Ice. I think that was a Paul Rogers number. It was a great old song. We had that in the show. And I think at one time we even did Kiki D's I Got the Music in Me. So we had a variety of songs that we alternated in and out. But she said, I want to keep doing this. I want to get back to San Francisco and play for my old people, and I want you to do it with me. And so I said, okay, let's take a ride to San Francisco. We got in the car, drove up to San Francisco, and she introduced me to Spencer Dryden, who was the drummer for the Jefferson Airplane and was now playing with the New Riders of the Purple Sage, and his girlfriend. They lived in Mill Valley. And they said, yeah, stay with us, of course. So we stayed with Spencer and Ruby for a couple of days. Well, Kathi, not probably the second day, she said, there's this guy named Michael Oster, and he's got a booking agency called the San Francisco Interface. Let's set up an appointment and go over to talk to him. So the next day we went over to his booking agency. And it was the whole floor of almost like a warehouse kind of building. He had a great big staff working there. He was very happy to see Kathi and to be working with her again. So we set up a bunch of gigs for San Francisco, San Anselmo, Mill Valley, around the whole surrounding area. Well, we drove back to LA and we felt pretty good about the trip.
Okay, can you tell us about some of the places you played in San Francisco?
San Francisco. Okay. It was April, and we played at a place called The Stud. It was on my birthday. It was a gay leather biker bar that loved her. She had a lot of friends in the Divisadero area, Lombardy Street, Divisadero. In fact, she introduced me to a couple of queens that were friends of hers, Edwina and Wally. They always had cocktails at 6, and Kathi loved her cocktails and such. So we were staying with them a couple of nights. We played at the Keystone Corner in Berkeley. Now, Eddie Money was our opening act. He opened for us, we played a set. He opened again, we played the closing set. At that show, there were 6 of the hottest, most desirable hippie chicks I had ever seen standing right in front of me at the foot of the stage, and they were all passing me up their phone numbers and titillating messages and so forth. We met Eddie, of course, and he was a fun guy, and the shows were great there. We went over really big. When we were playing around LA, the agency booked us at a wedding in Fontana. We were contracted to play one show after the wedding, and that was it. Just before the gig, I had burnt my finger trying to change a light bulb, and I had a huge blister on this finger. It was very hard to play. But we got through the show, everything was great. Well, we're in the dressing room, we had completely loaded up the cars, and we were just getting back into our street clothes. And a guy walks in, looked like a convict. He had muscles, like the Hulk. And he said, where are you guys going? And we said, well, we're done. We were just supposed to play one show, and it went great, and thanks for having us. And he says, no, you don't understand. You're going to play some more. And then he grabbed his shirt and he ripped it open, and he said, my name's Wayne, and I'm from Fontana. And he had Fontana tattooed across his chest. And he said, and you guys are not going anywhere. Reminded me of a scene out of the Blues Brothers movie where they had just played that country and western bar, and they had a beer tab of $250. And Belushi says, well, let me just go out to the car and get some traveler's checks, and I'll be right back. So I said to Wayne, I said, okay, no problem. Let me go get my stuff from the car. I just took it out. We'll be right back. He said, that's better. I'll go, So he took off and we took off. Oh, man. Sometimes, so you never know what is going to happen at a private event, let alone a public event. So I'm not from Fontana. My name's not Wayne. So. We had a series of shows booked up in San Francisco. Rob took his car, and Kathi and I took my car. So we stopped around Lodi for some lunch at a McDonald's. And I had a joint of some Colombian gold. and we smoked it after we ate. And we were getting a good buzz, and we were getting on the freeway. And I had it in third gear as we were just about to get on the interstate. And we were so high on the pot that about 10 minutes later, I realized I was still in third gear. And I said, oh shit. And I shifted it into fourth, but by that time, the car was smoking. I had completely seized up the engine. So we found a payphone. And I don't know how, but somehow we had gotten in touch with Rob, and he was already at Spencer and Ruby's house in Mill Valley. I said, Rob, we're stuck. You got to come back and get us. He said, okay. So he turned around, drove like 100 miles south, found us at a bowling alley where we were just hanging out there waiting on him. And we had to haul ass to get there on time for our gig. Well, we were doing about 95, and all of a sudden, the blue lights come on behind us, and policeman comes up. He says, you in a hurry, son? He said, well, yeah, Rob tried to explain. He said, well, I was tailing a guy at 90, and you passed me like I was standing still, as he was in an unmarked car, So I think Rob got a $125 ticket. I'm not sure, but we took it out of the band pay and paid him. There was one show that we did where Kathi, I was blazing on a solo, and she took this long mic cord and she started whipping it around, and she started like whipping me from behind while I was playing. And it was almost like something out of an S&M performance. It was wild because she was like fantasizing this, and I'm playing, and it's like, play faster, more feeling, more intensity. And that was one of those moments that you have on stage that is seldom captured but often remembered.
Was the two of you involved in a love interest like?
One time. Oh. Another time when we were doing a several-day stint, probably a week up in the Bay Area, Rob and I decided, let's get really prepared. We'll go up a day early. We'll go to Wally and Edwina's house. We'll stay with them. And we'll just really make the trip enjoyable. So we got a gram of Coke. We each got a hit of acid. We had some Quaaludes and a lot of weed. So we dropped the acid, smoked the joint, took a hit of the blow, and started driving. It was probably a 5.5-hour drive, and we were just lighting it up all the way. Man, by the time we got to Frisco, it was probably cocktail hour at Wally and Edwina's house, and we came in, we were flying high, man. We were 3 sheets to the wind. But we felt great. Kathi showed up the next day, and we started gigging again. All of the fans came out. The shows were really terrific. We were all playing great. And Kathi singing, when she was on, which was 95% of the time, there was no equal. I had played with Bonnie Bramlett, and Bonnie was great. She had the tone, she had the sound, but Kathi had the pipes, the power, the range, and the sound. So she could go where no singers had gone before in the female range. I would say that she was my Steve Perry equivalent of the greatest male rock singer I ever worked with. Kathi has to be the best female rock singer I ever worked with. And then we played the lion's share on the 25th, I think it was. And at that gig, two incredible rock stars walked in. Mickey Hart, the drummer for the Grateful Dead, and Nick Gravenites, the lead singer for the Electric Flag. And they're sitting right next to the stage. And we played our first show. And Mickey and Nick came up to me. They introduced themselves to me. I knew them by name, but we had never met. And they said, hey, would you mind if I played the drums and Nick got up and sang a blues with you on your next set? I said, would I mind? Of course not. I'd be honored. That would be great. So we had a drink together and chilled out and talked about the Grateful Dead. And I was a tremendous Mike Bloomfield fan. I pumped Nick for a lot of information about playing with Mike and Buddy Miles and being in the Flag and like that. So it came time to get up and play. And we got up and we played a 10-minute blues that was just so rich and soulful. I got to really stretch out. Nick really did a great job on the call and the response with me. The audience completely went crazy. And at the end of the night, of course, we partied until dawn. That was just one of many super experiences we had up there. Another club we were playing at, and I don't remember the name, Dino Valenti showed up. Now, Dino, actually from Fall River, Massachusetts, he was the lead singer for the Quicksilver Messenger Service. And I think he even wrote Get Together by the Youngbloods. So we had a day off in between our touring, and he invited me to his schooner. He lived on a great big boat in Sausalito, California. So I showed up, I don't know, 1 o'clock or something in the afternoon. He was real happy to see me. He said, let's get acquainted. And he had a wall of maybe 20 acoustic guitars. And he had a big chest that looked like a pirate's chest. And he walked over to the chest and he opened it up, and there was a couple of pounds of killer bud in there. So we rolled up some doobies and smoked some weed. I decided on a guitar and just started playing. And we played for several hours, just smoking and laughing and drinking some wine and playing more songs. And man, he was such a nice guy. I loved it. Well, that was one part of the Quicksilver connection. The other part was there were two guitar players, John Cipollina and Gary Duncan. Now, Gary had a girlfriend named Dara Love. Dara was Hawaiian, and her father owned the Love's restaurant chain. They were all over the West Coast. So she had a big, beautiful house out in Richmond, California, and was driving a brand new Jensen Healey. At one of the gigs, Kathi introduced me to her because they were really good friends. We hit it off like that. Of course, she invited me back to her pad, and Rob had a friend from Denver who had showed up too. And so we all went back and stayed at her house for a couple of days while we were doing various gigs. In fact, one night, Dara didn't feel like going to the show, so she just said, take the Jensen. I said, okay. So we played a great night. I was really stoked. And I recall driving across the Golden Gate Bridge, maybe 2 a.m, top down, in this incredible sports car, and going out to this beautiful Hawaiian chick's house. She said she loved me after a couple of days, and I was really digging on her. Well, the tour came to an end, and all of a sudden I realized this great groovy world I had been living in was coming to an end, and I had to go back to LA, and Terry and I were living together down there. I went back to LA, and we hooked up with the Apogee Agency. Michael Oster was busy booking us a second round of tours for the San Francisco Bay Area again. Meantime, it was time to play around LA. So our agent, I think, was named Lloyd. And he booked us at several gigs. We played the San Diego State University in their huge basketball gym. It was an amazing event. Then we were playing at a club out near Riverside, which was on the way sort of towards the Ontario Motor Speedway, but not quite as far. Well, the club owner was wild over Kathi. And he was plying her with drinks, but we held it together the first night. The second night, he started off with her with a pitcher of martinis. So the first set was a little rough. She was kind of not quite on pitch on everything. And normally, man, she would hit the high notes that would blow your hat off. She could growl like a bear in the woods. When it came time to the blues, man, she could get down. She had that it, you know. So second show, maybe the third song, she was so drunk, she fell down straight on her butt and was kind of, what happened? Where am I? So we finished up the night. Guy gave us a check for both nights, and we took it back, gave it to the agency so they could get their commission, and then they would pay us. So maybe a week went by. Rob and I went by the agency, and the guy said, "Hey man, the check bounced. Looks like you're out the money." And we said, "Oh, really? We'll see about this." So we had a job booked at Bill Gazzari's, of all places. And Van Halen was playing with us. Rob had some wicked Peruvian flake. So we finished the night. Everyone went home, and we said, "You know what? You think we could find our way back to that guy's house?" Because the guy out in Riverside, Danny Blue, in the middle, in between one of the sets of the first night, he took us to his pad and turned us on to some good weed, and then drove us back to the club. So Rob and I were a little tipsy, but we said, "Yeah, let's drive out there. Maybe we can find it." So we found the club, and we started, and it's dark out, you know. We tried to find the original area, but we couldn't. So we laid down in like this little park. The sun comes up, we're all grizzled, and where is that guy's house? We gotta find his house. He stiffed us and he's gonna pay us. So we were looking around for about an hour and about ready to give up. And then I saw a building that kind of looked like his, and I walked up the stairway, and the door was open, and I looked, and there he was cooking breakfast. I ran down to the street. "Rob, I found him!" Rob came up, and we walked in the door, and we said, "Danny, good morning. We understand that your check bounced. You haven't returned our calls. Our feelings are hurt. You got to make this good, brother." And he said, "Well, I just don't have the money." We said, "Well, we've been up all night. You got any weed?" And he said, yeah, sure." So he breaks out some weed. And we said, now, how are we going to solve this, Danny? He says, I don't know. Then we looked over at his stereo, his hi-fi components and stuff, and we said, Danny, we're going to borrow this and take it down to the local pawn shop. We'll be right back. We took his stereo stuff. We went down and we hocked it for $1,000, what he owed us. We came back and we gave him the pawn ticket. And we said, okay, all your gear's down there, and when you get the money, just go get it. And he had a couple of breakfast stools, I guess, that were really padded deep like this. And Rob said, you know what, I could use this for my drum cushion. So I think he took the stool with him and ripped off the padded part and glued it onto his drum seat. Well, after all that and being up all night and finally getting the money, and we rolled back into LA, it was about noon. We went straight to the agency and we paid them their commission. And we said, don't you ever stiff us again. So they didn't. Anyway, we were playing around LA. We played at a gay bar called Lloyd's on La Cienega Boulevard. Kathi had a lot of gay friends, so. Then Kathi introduced me to Cynthia Plastercaster and this girl named Lainey who hung out with her when she was doing the Plastercasters. If you never heard about that, she made plaster casters of famous rock stars' penises erect. Jimi Hendrix was the first one she did. Anyway, this girl was there, and I met her, and one thing led to another, and that's Hollywood for you, okay? So I hope I answered the question. I'm sure I went way too far.
Yeah, you sure did.
That's me. There was an up-and-coming group called The Tubes. Fee Waybill. White punks on dope. Well, they were friends, and they had come to see us when we were at the Stud on my 25th birthday. So we were back in town for another series of gigs, and we met all of the Tubes. In fact, they said, hey, we just got signed with Columbia Records or somebody, and we're giving our whole performance tomorrow night. Can you guys make it and be our special guests? We said, sure. So if you've never seen the Tubes or their act, just go to YouTube. They made Alice Cooper's act look like a high school play. They were just really zany and out there.
Why did y'all stop performing together?
That's a great question. It's somewhat of an enigma. We were due to play at Bippy's in Santa Cruz, just south of San Francisco. Now, Kathi had a habit of, after every show, all of her hangers-on would come out and she'd go off with them and party all night. And this night was no exception. Although the people were down here, we had never met them before. We had never played Santa Cruz before. And these people seemed to be a little bit kind of seedy. And they were feeding Kathi Reds and booze. So we said, Kathi, we're done. Let's go back to the hotel because we got to go back to LA in the morning. And she said, no, I'm going off with these people. I'll be fine. I'll see you in the morning. Okay. So we went to her room the next morning, knocked on the door, no answer. Pounded on the door, no answer. We got the hotel guy to let us in. Her clothes were there, but she wasn't there. So we called the police. We asked if they had her there, if they had any assaults or any murders or anything to do with her at all. Not a word. We tried calling any of her friends that we knew in the area to see if they had heard from her. Nothing. We went to all of the restaurants and everything in the area, asked if they had seen her. Nothing. So we went back to LA after searching 6 or 7 hours. And after a couple of days, we got a call from her. And she was really angry. We said, "Where are you? What happened?" She said, "I OD'd on Reds and booze and ended up in the ER and spent a couple of days at the hospital. And you guys abandoned me. You left me there." We said, "Kathi, we didn't know where you were. We didn't know how to contact you. We tried the police. We asked around. We did everything we could." Well, she was not getting over that easily. And that was probably the beginning of the end. We didn't have any more gigs booked on the horizon. We had had 2 very successful Bay Area tours. We had played around LA quite a bit, and that ended the great, incredible, sometimes happy, sometimes exuberant, sometimes sad adventures that we had playing together with Kathi McDonald. But I think she was in need of rehab, honestly. And her personal issues just got to the point where she needed to change. The whole experience of working with Kathi was just incredible. Number one, the exposure to all of the San Francisco people, all of the fans we met, the great times I had with Dara Love, all of the incredible music that we made together was just remarkable. In fact, I have a tape of us performing at the Whiskey somewhere. And if I can find it, I'll put some of that music on this video. And if I don't, I hope you enjoyed this story, because working with somebody who has been on 75 gold or platinum albums was just a joy. And I've got to ask you, if you like the video, please press the like button. Please subscribe. Maybe share it with a friend. And that way, I can keep bringing you these great stories. One more thing. Keep love in your heart, a song in your head, and I will see you down the musical story highway in the next adventure from the old-time rock and roller. For now, so long.